Welcome back to part 19 of the OC story, where I create a story based on you guys' suggestions down in the comments below, a few ideas that I've got, and then improvise the rest. This one will probably be a shorter one because I'm still recovering from the flu, as you can no doubt tell. Although the tea is doing its job as well, and the octaves are dropping slowly and slowly. So let's get into this part of the story. So the votes from my Patreon, my Instagram, the TikTok, and the comment section are in, and you guys were voting for who was coming down the stairs of the dungeon. I gave you guys some options, and you have picked Methalia. This is the wife of the second son, so the currently prince, second heir to the throne, and it is his wife Methalia, who is the mother of Tinny Augustine, who the two of them have met, and she has come down the stairs into the dungeon. I also got my Patreons to vote for why she came down, and the word they picked was sorrow. So let's see what she's doing down there. Erasmus clapped a hand over his mouth in the darkness, far down the end of the hallway, as he recognized the woman. She was tall, with long, dark, curling red hair, and as she stepped, she swayed slightly. She had a bottle of something dark and nearly empty in her hands, and it looked as though she'd long discarded using a glass for it. She swayed as she stepped down the final curve of the stairs and into the long hallway of prison cells. She headed straight down to the end. The woman knew where she was going. She didn't stop until she reached the prison cell where the two assassins lay. And they had fallen silent as well, almost as though they'd recognized her step. She'd been down here before, it seemed. She rapped on the bars with her knuckles, slurring her words as she began to speak. It was low, mumbled to start off with, and then it grew louder. And the louder it grew, the more tears there were, with the words mixed and melded in. The woman was crying and shouting and whispering, and then crying and shouting again, round and around, sipping from the bottle that had long since been emptied. She slammed it against the side of the bars. The inmates had moved back further into the cell. They weren't saying anything. Like condemned men who had learned, possibly the hard way, that they shouldn't say anything at this point. The woman, Methalia, shouted on and on, but the words were spewed and slurred all around and didn't make a lot of sense. She was shouting, you, and she was pointing into the cell. You, she shouted over and over again. And then a phrase came out, and it was repeated over and over, falling under and over itself. Why didn't you just do it? You should have just done it. Done it. Over and over again, she said it. Should have just done it. Why couldn't you have just done it? Erasmus and Darrow looked at each other, slowly inching just a little closer from the shadows, listening. She said it again. Should have just done it. And she was pointing into the cell now. She threw the bottle in and it smashed on the floor. The two men yelped and leapt out of the way. Both hands were gripping the bars now, partly to hold herself up in her staggering state and partly as she tried to tear them apart to get at the men inside. Fresh tears were springing from her eyes as she yelled. Then maybe, but no. And then she was off again, words and rambling and spewing over and over, and none of it made sense, and it was garbled and lost in tears and shouts and cries. Erasmus was shivering in the assassin's arms. He held him close, as the prince whispered, I should go to her, but I can't go to her. We were not exactly close, but I could not trust her. She would tell them I am here. I wish I could do something for her. I can't do anything for her. The assassin held him tight as they continued to listen. She was getting louder now. Louder. shouting something over and over again. This time it was different, though. "They won't let me go. They won't let me go. I could go too. They won't let me go." And then she was back at the assassins once again. "And it's your fault. Your fault. Should have just done your job. Wasn't that what you were there to do? Shouldn't have just done your job. They won't let me go with her." And then the woman slumped to the floor, still clutching at the iron bars, with her back to the assassin and the prince, who she had no idea were watching. It took everything, every single thing in the prince not to attempt to walk down the hall to comfort her. But it was true. They were never very close, and she would turn him in. He knew it deep down inside, though he wished he could do something for her. She would turn him in a heartbeat. So, holding tight to his assassin's hand, he nudged the man towards the steps, and they slipped away while her back was still turned, heading back up into the main ballroom. Upstairs, they got caught up at once into the hustle and bustle of the dancing. Music was playing, and they spotted Princess Augustine, Tinny, dancing around and playing with the jester, Choly. She spotted the pair, and as the dancing and singing and clapping started up again and a new song began, she slowly worked her way through the dance floor towards them. She danced with both of them, carefully never calling either of them by name, acting simply like a jolly princess child, taking each by the hand and spinning them round and round as the band continued to play. She was called back by her mother and father and brother about an hour or so later. They didn't speak very much in their little hour together, just smiled and danced and watched her be happy. Neither of them let her drink anything. She tried, but neither of them let her. As she was called away, Erasmus couldn't help looking over at Methalia. There was not an inch on her face that gave away what she had been doing a mere hour ago. Her hair was done, perfect, her makeup, her dress, everything. She was a little paler, perhaps, but if you didn't know her well, you wouldn't have spotted it. And as her daughter hurried over to her father, and her brother, the woman embraced the child, holding her close, and they danced together in the next song. The assassin watched too, curious. Something was going on, but they couldn't put their finger on it just yet between the two of them. Both were equally determined to work it out, though. They had both agreed without discussing it out loud not to mention this to Tinny. They didn't want her imagining her mother in that state, and they thought, until they knew more, best not to worry the child. The dancing continued, starting up again and again, more songs, and they settled back into the crowd to just watch for a while. The coronation was slowly drawing closer, and everything was getting more and more chaotic and riotous as the joy grew and grew. The new, soon-to-be crowned King Frederick was standing with his own wife Hannibal and their son, Prince Philly. He was around 17 or so and looked quite bored with the proceedings, but stood close to his mother and father. All eyes were upon them as they moved across the dance floor, and Erasmus carefully stepped behind Darrow any time they drew near. "I do not miss any of this," he whispered into the assassin's ear. "None of it?" "None of it. Possibly some of my family, some of the people who work here that I knew, but not the occasions, not the constant being under scrutiny in the spotlight. I do not miss any of that at all." "Can't say I blame you. I wouldn't miss any of that. Wouldn't want it in the first place, neither." "Dance with me, Darrow. Make this the one time I enjoy being here." "Oh, I dunno. I'll never learn. I won't be very good." "I'll lead you. Come on." And so they danced. It went on far, far longer than either of them were expecting. The music swelled and played, as fast songs and slow songs and sweet waltzes and ballads came over and over, and the time drifted on around them as the pair danced in the crowd of other people, and neither of them stood out at all. Everyone around them was dressed just as fancily, if not more so, and it was nice to be just swallowed up and part of the whole. No eyes roaming them, no need to worry, just nothing. They hadn't talked any more about what the fortune reader had said. It came sometimes to the back of Erasmus's mind, and he decided, unhappily, that he should tell the assassin what had happened in those woods so long ago. That deal he had made with the mist, it must have been. Something had changed. Something had fractured and cracked in his lifeline, and it was only right that the man he wished to spend the rest of his mortal life with knew why. But not yet. Not right now. Not while his heart was still beating too fast any time he caught the eye of someone he vaguely thought he recognised. Not when they were, well, having so many other things to try to work out. So, he let it sit in the back of his mind. But the decision was nonetheless made. He would tell Darrow, and he would tell him soon. As the dancing finished, the music coming to a halt, trumpets sounded, signalling more festivities about to begin, and they all stepped back and cleared a space as the members of the royal family took seats up on a high box to watch as the performers juggled in. And literally, they juggled in, all of them juggling various items. Some knives, some balls, some glasses that looked incredibly dangerous and expensive. Tinny, they could see, was clapping along from her seat next to her little brother, who was looking enraptured. There was a variety of acts, one of whom was Choly the jester. He was interesting. He told a few jokes, he juggled, he danced around, he did impressions. He worked with the other performers, fire-breathing and doing interesting things. They jumped through hoops and did, well, little bits of everything. But slowly, they noticed that Choly was, well, a little off his game. Drunk, possibly, but not completely. He wasn't slurring his words, he was just a little too loud. And occasionally when they made a joke at the expense of the royal family and everyone laughed, there was no mirth in his face. And dark eyes occasionally would just sweep over the royals, back and forth. And there were a few pauses that lasted just a beat too long. The assassin noticed it the most. Erasmus noticed too, mainly because he remembered Choly. The man had never behaved like this before. The pair gave each other a sideways glance, wordlessly mentioning to each other that they'd noticed something. The jester grew louder and louder, snappier, and then his quips became barbs and the barbs became biting. And eventually other performers took over the spotlight and quickly began distracting with other things, performing little skits and snippets and singing songs. And Choly disappeared into the crowd. Interesting, they thought. But then the trumpet sounded again, and the coronation was going to begin. Everyone began to file out to go and watch from the royal chambers as the now Prince Frederick became crowned officially King Frederick. I do not wish to watch this. I'd like to go. Darrow didn't ask why. They left, slipping silently through the crowds, with a small brief smile to Tinny as they left. It took a long time. The coronation was certainly in full swing going ahead as they finally reached the palace doors and made their way out into the still bustling market and squares and things outside. There were plenty of people who couldn't go in, just waiting for the coronation to be ended so they could watch the balcony as the now king came out to greet them. There was still plenty going on, and they strolled around just watching for a while. There were street performers out here too, dancing and singing. There was musicians, the bars were all still open, the little mini taverns. They saw the fortune teller. She gave them a small wave and a smile as they walked past. There were stores and shops, and they just browsed for a long time. As they stood, admiring some wooden carvings, and watching the man behind the stall start to carve a pig out of another piece of wood, Darrow slid his arm around Erasmus's waist and asked quietly, "Do you want to see him come out on the balcony thing? Or do you want to just go? We can go back anytime. We can do whatever you want. Whatever you want. Alright?" Erasmus nodded, thinking, "I do not know. I don't need to see it. I don't know how I feel, really." "If you miss it, will you regret it?" "I don't think so. I do not think it could bring me any joy or any sorrow. Just whatever will be, will be. I no longer have a place, and I don't want it. If tonight has taught us anything at all, it is that I definitely do not miss this, and I do not regret the decisions that we have made. I don't want to come back. I want to," and he glanced around to check if anyone was overhearing, "I want to do the plan. I want to disappear. I want to be not myself. I'm certain." "Alright. Then we'll do it. Soon." "Yes. Very soon." And so they didn't watch. They didn't follow the crowd when more trumpets sounded. They didn't go to stand under the balcony to watch the new crowned king waving down to his subjects. Instead, they went into one of the pop-up taverns and had some dinner. A long, slow, late dinner. They sat by the fire. They talked softly, making vague plans and ideas and just talking it out. And then, with midnight fast approaching and the dark, cloudy sky full of scattered stars and a bright, bright moon, they headed out, leaving the palace grounds completely and heading back towards their tavern for the night. As they stepped into the first of the city streets, well out of the looming shadow of the palace, a voice they both recognized appeared just behind them. "Well, that was a good night, wasn't it? I'm so glad you came. Sorry I didn't talk to you very much. I didn't want people to overhear us. Did you have fun? I saw you dancing. You looked so cute together. Did you have fun? Did you? Both men jumped immediately. "Tinny!" Erasmus gave her a swift hug. Darrow looked her up and down. She had changed out of her fancy clothes and was now wearing something far more fitting to the city streets. She could have passed for an urchin brushing by. "Man, those shoes." He looked at her feet, still adorned in the beautiful ballet slippers. "We didn't hear you coming. Scared the life out of me." "That's the idea." She looked incredibly pleased with herself. "Look, I don't have very long, but I really, really want to try something with you. Will you come with me?" "What are we trying?" Darrow asked, but there was a smile at his lips. Erasmus turned back to his niece. "What is it we are trying, Tinny?" "Ice cream! I found the best place, but I haven't been able to have it for so long, and I thought, well, you could try it. And, well, no offense or anything, but I kind of thought maybe Darrow had never had any before." She looked at the man. The assassin nodded. "Can't say I've tried it. Sniffed it before, seen it, got the vague premise, cold, icy flavour, I guess." "You've never ever tried it? Brilliant, amazing. You'll have some, won't you? What flavour is your favourite?" "Wait, you can't have a favourite flavour." "You don't have a favourite flavour of ice cream? Oh my goodness me. Can I get you my favourite? And then if you like that, we can go from there. And then next time we get ice cream, you can have another one." There it is. Come on, it's just down this way. Look, the lights are still on. I knew they were open late." Before they could say a word, the little girl was dragging both of them further down a street towards a glowing sign that read "Ice Cream Parlour," and it was indeed open incredibly late. "So, which flavour's your favourite? What am I getting given here?" Darrow was keeping up with them from behind as Erasmus was dragged by the hand and the little girl Tinny was heading at the front.
Triple chocolate. What's your favourite, Uncle Erasmus?
I'm quite partial to strawberry, actually. Or a raspberry, or, ooh, if they've got a coconut swirl. The two of them continued to discuss ice cream flavours as they ran on ahead. Darrow was laughing just behind them. Hang on, did you say triple chocolate? How many different types of chocolate even is there? What the f- Three shadows leapt out of the darkness. Hands clapped over the assassin's mouth as he yelped and struggled. A mouth breathed hot air against his ear as it whispered,
I knew that was you, Darrow Cast.
Three pairs of hands caught at him and dragged, pulling Darrow backwards away into the darkness. The wanted prince and the young princess turned from the ice cream stall at once, hearing something behind them, and all they saw was Darrow's wide eyes as he was dragged away, already half a street far from them. Erasmus screamed Darrow's name as the shadows dragged him further away, Tinny taking his hand and squeezing tight. And on that dramatic note, I have a question for you in the comments section. It's a bit like fight or flight, really. So, would you like Erasmus and Tinny to go running after them and try to fight these shadowy assassins? Or would you like them to follow and just keep an eye on them and see where they are going? So, sort of fight or flight, but more flight after them or fight, I guess. So, run after or try to fight them. Which would you like? Let me know in the comments down below. And thank you for joining in with this story, and I will see you again in another week. Bye bye.